Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivedika Charja Ashtatarasata Says the Mother Divine Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavarinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi. Here's an extra book if somebody would like. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we're reading text 19 from Canto 7, Chapter 6. Prahlad instructs his demoniac schoolmates. Asuratmaja. Asura Atmaja, O sons of the Asuras. Nahyachutam priya prinatyato bhavayaso suratmaja atmavat sarvabhutanam siddhatvad iha sarvataha Nahyachutam prinatyato bhavayaso suratmaja atmavat sarvabhutanam siddhatvad iha sarvataha. Nahyachutam prinayato bhavayaso suratmaja atmavat sarvabhutanam siddhatvad iha sarvataha. Nahyachutam prinayato atmavat sarvabhutanam siddhatvad iha sarvataha. Nahyachutam prinayato bhavayaso suratmaja atmavat sarvabhutanam siddhatvad iha sarvataha. Nahyachutam prinayato bhavayaso suratmaja atmavat sarvabhutanam siddhatvad iha sarvataha. Not he, indeed, Achyutam, the infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prinayataha, satisfying. Bahu, much. Ayasaha, endeavor. Asura Atma Ja, O sons of demons. Atmavat, because of being intimately related as the Supersoul. Sarva Bhutanam, of all living entities. Siddhatvat, because of being established. Iha, in this world. Sarvataha, in all directions, in all times, and from all angles of vision. No escape. Translation: my dear sons of demons, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, is the original Supersoul, the Father of all living entities. Consequently, there are no impediments to pleasing Him or worshiping Him under any conditions, whether one be a child or an old man. The relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always a fact. And therefore, there is no difficulty in pleasing the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. One may ask, quote, one is certainly very attached to family life. But if one gives up family life to be attached to the service of the Lord, one must undergo the same endeavor and trouble. Therefore, what is the benefit of taking the trouble to engage in the service of the Lord? This is not a valid objection. The Lord asserts in Bhagavad Gita 14:4, Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavanti haya tasmat brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradakpita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. The Supreme Lord Narayana is the seed-giving Father of all living entities, because the living entities are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. Mami Vangsho ... Jiva Bhutaha. There is no difficulty in establishing the intimate relationship between a father and son. There is no difficulty in reestablishing the natural intimate relationship between Narayana and the living entities. Salpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bayat, if one performs even very slight devotional service, Narayana is always ready to save one from the greatest danger. The definite example is Ajamila. Ajamila separated himself from the Supreme Personality of Godhead by performing many sinful activities and was condemned by Yamaraj to be severely punished. But because at the time of death he chanted the name of Narayana, although he was calling not for the Supreme Lord Narayana, but for his son named Narayana, he was saved from the hands of Yamaraj. Therefore, pleasing Narayana does not require as much endeavor as pleasing one's family, community, and nation. We have seen important political leaders killed for a slight discrepancy in their behavior. Therefore, pleasing one's society, family, community, and nation It's extremely difficult. Pleasing Narayana, however, is not at all difficult. It is very easy. Final paragraph. One's duty is to revive one's relationship with Narayana. A slight endeavor in this direction will make the attempt successful, whereas one will never be successful in pleasing his so-called family, society, and nation, even if one endeavors to sacrifice his life. The simple endeavor involved in the devotional service of Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, hearing and chanting the holy name of the Lord, can make one successful in pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore bestowed his blessings by saying, Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, all glories to Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. The final sentence. If one wants to derive the actual benefit from this human form, he must take to the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Go back to the verse in translation. Nahya chutam prinayato bhavayaso saratmaja atmavat sarvabhutanam siddhadvada iha sarvataha. My dear sons of demons, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana is the original Supersoul, the Father of all living entities. Consequently, there are no impediments to pleasing him or worshiping him under any conditions, whether one be a child or an old man. The relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always a fact, and therefore there's no difficulty in pleasing the Lord. This is a special section of Srimad Bhagavatam, similar to Canto 5, Chapter 5, where Rishabdeva is instructing his 100 sons. Of course, in that case, that's a father and son. But it's universal instructions, because out of those 100 sons of Rishabdev, some became Uttama Bhagavats, some became kings, some became brahmanas, some were married, some remain unmarried and totally detached. But they're the platform of universal instruction for persons who are in the to be instructed phase of their life, or specifically like student life, like the brahmacharis, brahmacharinis in the temple, the student life. So it's a fantastic section for principle-based life. Not that the rest of the Bhagavatam isn't, but specifically instructions to prepare one for the later stages of life, whatever they may be. Specifically. I remember during Prabhupada's time, when in the Gurukula, with a very stark memory of the morning activity in the Gurukula was all the Gurukul boys lined up, and the top of their squeaky voiced lungs, they chanted loudly, like every day, loudly, these verses of Rishabdev's instructing his sons, because they're very important instructions. And similarly, this section, this is, that's not the personality of Godhead instructing his 100 sons. This is Prahlad Maharaj, pure devotee of the Lord, instructing his classmates. We don't know the number. But the instructions that Prahlad is giving to his classmates are in dynamic, foundational principles to live one's life by, as one matures later in life, one should know whether it's the renounced order of life or whether it's the in the family situation of life, whatever the ashram may be in the future, same principles apply universally, and these are establishing them. And in principle, two outstanding primary points are attachment for the personality of Godhead and detachment from the interest of trying to be an enjoyer of material nature. You know, the plight of the living entity, striving to be Purusha, striving to be the enjoyer of Prakriti. That's what Purusha means, the enjoyer of Prakriti, material nature. Regardless of ashram, striving to be the enjoyer of Prakriti is its material existence. So detachment from that, and the consequence, or a necessity for that to take place, is attachment to the Supreme. Just a little bit of sharing, because I had this happened recently. I spent a month in China, and one of the experiences I had was spending about 2 hours with a Buddhist millionaire. Millionaire. They just hit the they call it, they have a name for it in their company, as a diamond. That is, in 1 year, gross income in 1 year was $1 million. A diamond Buddhist. And keep it short. It was very educational for me in, how do you have a conversation with a millionaire Buddhist? So I was trying to explain the principle of bhakti, and it wouldn't go in. It kept bouncing. Actually, they had kind of like, and they didn't use these words, but kind of evolved from Buddhism to beyond Buddhism kind of notion. Like, I don't want to be part of any religion. That, we know that one here in the West. Rather, the principles of Buddhism were deeply embedded, and that is, compassion, and their happiness was acts of compassion, and they were interested, their sankalpa, the thing that they were focused on was, what can you, what can you give me to help me connect with, with the hand motion, this higher intelligence and, universal formless thing, blob, nirvana, Brahman, without giving it a name, just like that. Because I want to, why? Because I want the intelligence how to be more successful at acts of compassion. Have more resource so I can do acts of compassion and feel more deeply the compassion in those acts of compassion. And to become the diamond person, there was this intelligence that just came. And it was wonderful. The experience was wonderful, and the outcome was also very nice. But the experience was wonderful. And how can I go? Can you help me? I'm interested in that wisdom that can. 16 different ways I tried. She's a mother. This was a woman. So, do you have any children? Yes, I have a daughter. what's the relationship between you and your daughter? I love my daughter. So, because you love your daughter, you do many things for your daughter, not because you want something back from your daughter, just because you love your daughter, right? Yeah. So now, your daughter's receiving from you. Now, what is wholesome for your daughter? That she feels some gratitude and reciprocates, like you're not expecting that, but it's wholesome, it's ideal, nourishing. So you're receiving from this. Now, the only thing that's agreed upon is that energy comes from energetic. So there's this energetic from which energy comes, and intelligence and wisdom. So energy comes from energetic. So it's not nothingness that's an energy. And there's an energetic, and energetic means person, bounce. The resistance was, turns out, with her fist clenched, saying, I don't want to become dependent and submissive to anyone, to another person. Okay, so Bhakti bounced. Anyway, without all the detail, the teaching of Bhagavad Gita and the teaching that we're receiving from Prahlad, and in this particular verse and purport, is this is the mystery of bhakti, because it's not just our own effort, it's connecting with the mercy of the most merciful. Here the term that's used to refer to the Supreme Lord is Achyuta. In the previous verse it's Narayana, so Prabhupada is repeating the Narayana nomenclature again. Narayan Swami, I understand, is going to speak on the previous verse because he was really inspired by the previous verse, something like that. This is verse number 19, because it's context sensitive, I'll just mention the previous two verses combined together. The message of detachment. The detachment from these are boys. These like 5-6-year-old boys. The message of detachment from entanglement in material life. Entanglement in the essence of material life is, everybody knows, and you have male-female attraction, the enjoyment of sense gratification, and the byproducts of sense gratification, and all of that. So detachment from all of that, and attachment to Narayana. That's his advice. You'll hear more about it tomorrow. Now, this verse is that attachment to Narayana is very easy. And the attachment to material is very troublesome and is never successful. So now Prabhupada is introducing right at the beginning of the purport. Our acharyas will do like this from time to time. A verse spoken by, in this case, Prahlad, or spoken by Krishna, or spoken by someone, it's addressing a doubt. And our acharyas, by their mercy, although the doubt may not be spoken, they reveal what that doubt is that's being addressed by the speaker. So the doubt, Prabhupada writes, text 19 purport, one is certainly very attached to family life. That's the previous. And don't be attached to family life because. So here's the doubt. But if one gives up family life to be attached to the service of the Lord, one must undergo the same endeavor and trouble. Therefore, what is the benefit of taking the trouble? To engage in the service of the Lord. You have endeavor with trouble, or endeavor with trouble. You give up one endeavor with trouble for another endeavor with trouble. So, I don't get it. Prahlad, can you explain? You're saying don't be attached over here. But attached over here, devotional service, we take some trouble. There's some austerity, there's some inconvenience, there's, what's the benefit? Specifically, that's the language here in Prabhupada's purport. What's the benefit? Well, from the previous verse, one of the benefits is apavarga. And little footnote, apavarga is, the connection in Canto 1, Chapter 2, fantastic chapter, worth reading hundreds of times again and again, because essence messages are embedded in that Canto 1, Chapter 2. And one of those essence messages is, Dharma is to be performed for apavarga, not for sense gratification. Dharmasya hi apavargasya nartotayopakopate. Nartasya dharmakantasya kamo labhaya hi smritaha. Very, very simple 1, 2, 3 verse. Fact, most people in Kali Yuga are unregulated, and it's becoming unregulated by codes of scripture, and it's becoming more and more so. The bottom of the pyramid is widening. And then there are some, going up the yoga ladder, some that are regulated. But those that are regulated by codes of religious principle, what do they want? They want sense gratification in this life. They want piety, which brings prosperity, and then heavenly situation in next life. Krishna says it in Chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita. Fact. Bhagavatam, no. Don't engage in dharma for gaining piety so you can prosper in this life and attain a heavenly situation after this life. No. It should only be for apavarga. Apavarga means liberation. Pavarga and apavarga. Pavarga is material existence. Apavarga is beyond material existence. Maybe I'll go through this. Pa, ba, ba, ma. Prabhupada would give that, the pavarga. It's connected to a Sanskrit grammar rule somebody may study Sanskrit someday. And there's, when you learn Sanskrit, there are certain sounds or combinations of words that make certain sounds that are building blocks for language. And one of them is pa, ba, ma. Then Prabhupada would go through what those 5 indicate. Pa indicates parishrama, hard labor, material life, hard labor. Pa, P-H-A, relates to the Sanskrit term thena, which means foam from the mouth, hard labor like a horse running, or people work very hard and foam comes from the mouth. Pa, ba, bondage, ba, fear, and it ends in ma, death. And then do it again. Pa, ba, ba, ma. One more time, and it's endless. And so, apavarga is the negation of all those things. That is, so what's the benefit of becoming attached to Narayana instead of attached to the temporary things, such as family life or sex life specifically, which leads to family? So Apavarga, at becoming attached. What's the benefit of attachment to Narayana, whatever endeavor and hardship may come from that kind of a life? Apavarga. You can cross-reference, because of time I'm not going to do this morning. Rishabdev teaches the same things. Same as Prahlad, same Rishabdev, or vice versa. Same as Rishabdev, same as Prahlad. It's the Bhagavatam's message is not inconsistent. The language varies from speaker to speaker. The principles are just being reinforced again and again. One of the Rishabdev's first teachings is, my dear sons, here's, sons of the demons, my dear sons, this human form of life should not be wasted in sense gratification, but rather the purpose of human form of life is tapo divyam tapa. Oh my goodness, the goal of the purpose of life, human form of life, is austerity? Wait a minute, I thought it was enjoy. Austerity? Come again, please? Father, what are you saying? Or Prahlad, what are you saying? The purpose of life is because it's this detachment that helps. Dry wood is easier to ignite than wet wood. Detachment that allows or enhances attachment to the Supreme. But if one just goes for attachment to the Supreme, then the wet wood can become dry wood. The tendency for involvement in matter in the mood of enjoyment is diminished. We'll get to the holy name at the end, but that's the fire that makes bringing the wet wood near the fire becomes dry wood, and the fire is the holy name, because the holy name is Krishna. So within the purport, Prabhupada has addressed a second benefit, because again the question is, what's the benefit? Become attached to Narayana? There's trouble. And it takes so much endeavor. What's the benefit? So apavarga, then addressed in the purport as being saved from the greatest danger. Svalpam asya dharmasya trayate maha bhaya. It's one of those five. Pa, ba, that one. Bhaya. And this is mahabhaya, great fear. And what's the greatest fear? I'm attending Prabhupada's explanation of this verse. Greatest fear? Seeing the Yamadutas. Maybe tomorrow Bhadrayan Maharaj will tell you the story about one of his congregation members who saw the Yamadutas. Huh? Mr. Prakash. It's a wonderful story. He'll tell the story. He saw the Yamadutas. It's not fiction. It's a nice story. I've heard it many times, but he's expert. So Mahabhaya is seeing the Yamadutas, because seeing the Yamadutas means that besides they're very fearful, there's something that goes along with that, the fearful look of them. It means being taken to Yamaraj because of sinful activities and being sent to some of those amazingly scary places, far more scary than any horror movie, in the hellish planets. Being taken by the Yamadutas means that. Yamaraj, hellish planets. And hellish planets isn't just like become an amoeba or something. It's hellish planets. And then after that, you may become an amoeba or a plant or whatever it is. Long description. So one becomes saved from that greatest danger, Mahabhaya, by svalpam dharma. Dharma, we know, devotional service or religious activity. Alpa means little, just a little. Sva-alpa, one's own activity, just the slightest performance of devotional service. You say it the other way. One is guaranteed to achieve the human form of life in next birth, or at least will not glide down to that Mahabhaya region. Just a little. So, congratulations, all of you. Even if you, leave Krishna consciousness and fall into Maya again, you're saved the next birth. You'll not have to see Yamadutas, and you'll at least the human form of life, or better. And then the opportunity for devotional service in next life. So, why the benefit? What's the benefit of Narayana attachment instead of material attachment in family life? Saves one from the greatest apavarga, saves one from the greatest danger. And then a third that's mentioned in the purport is the real duty, or he uses the word duty, the real mission, behind the designer of material existence, there's the Supreme Lord. He's the designer. And the human form of life has a purpose, or design, or a duty. And that is to revive one's relationship with Narayana. So the purpose of human life is fulfilled by that endeavor to become attached to the service of Lord Narayana, or the Supreme Lord. Now, most people don't know what the purpose of life is. They don't even ask. And even if they're told, it bounces. It doesn't go in. But there is a purpose, and an essential part of the Bhagavatam's message, or us as carriers of the Bhagavatam's message, is to help people understand what the purpose of life is, human form of life. So it's to become, again, situated in one's relationship with the Supreme Lord, Narayana, in the language here, or in the verse, Achyuta. Achyuta is he who is infallible, he who cannot fall like we can fall. Become attached to one who cannot fall, and you become liberated. Not just in the detached sense of liberated, but in the positive sense of liberated. The activity of the liberated soul is devotional service, eternal devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now just a few other points, and I'll leave time for questions, because you're a really good group that like lots of questions. Another major point in the verse is it's easy. And so Prabhupada explains, it's easy just as for a child to have some relationship of affection for their father. Unless the father is this cruel person, very natural. Child naturally wants that affection. Naturally. So it's not difficult. What to speak of the Supreme Lord, because he's our eternal Father. That verse is quoted from Bhagavad Gita. Aham bija pratak pita, chapter 14, of the seed-giving Father of all living entities. Seed-giving Father of all living entities. So he's our Father. The relationship is it's completely natural. And the Ajamila story is referred to. He went away. Big time. Not only he came to the material world, went away, but sinful activities, really bad. He went really far away. But just by calling Narayana, how easy to revive that relationship. And what to speak of if one does not engage in sinful activities and calls the name of the Supreme Lord. To please Narayana is not at all difficult. It is very easy. how easy is the personality of Godhead pleased by our calling his name? Just yesterday, someone from China wrote this little note about, it says things in Scripture, quoting the verse from Canto 2, Chapter 1, verse 10, about the chanting of the holy name, and how the benefits of it. It dissolves false ego. So their question was, should one chant with that objective in mind, that I'll get something? My false ego is going to be dissolved, or I'll get liberation. I do something because I get something. Isn't that not so good? Isn't it, is Krishna pleased simply that we chant his name? Does he have to reward us with something like this? That was a nice question. The principle of devotional service is to want to please the Supreme Lord. In fact, it's right in the verse, Nahi achyutam prina yato, satisfying. So Prabhupada's translation is therefore there is no difficulty in pleasing the Lord. It's a natural relationship, prinayato. And the problem is not on his side, the problem is our side. We've turned our attention away. And the chanting of the holy name has a very curing and restoring original consciousness effect. What's that? It's a prayer to please engage us again in your service. Or in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's, one of the ways that he is described as, please accept me again in your service. Just the mantra itself, our Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, calling Krishna's name with a particular mood. Please engage us in your service. Please engage me in your service once again. Please accept me again in your eternal service. Even if one doesn't know that's what one is saying. That's what one is saying. And the Supreme Lord reciprocates. The effect, the wet wood becoming dry wood effect, is the natural attraction, very simple, the natural attraction to again be engaged in Krishna's service. And from that desire to be engaged in Krishna's service, seed of desire, it grows and grows and grows and grows, and carefully nourished, it grows and grows into the highest stages of bhakti, into love of God, Krishna prema. And one who receives this in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, following carefully Rupa Goswami's instructions, it results in Vraja prema. It's just so amazing, so wonderful. And another very important part in Prahlad's instructions is this principle of association. And in fact, it's in the verse that you're going to hear tomorrow, which is the previous verse. Mukta Sangai, through the association of liberated souls, or those that are on the path of liberation, those that are recipients of Krishna's mercy. Associate with those people. And then you'll get Krishna's mercy, because they're saturated with Krishna's mercy. And with that comes attachment for the Supreme Lord, and further detached from matter. Prahlad's a real hero in many ways. Besides, what he's saying is right on. He's fearless. I mean, there's consequences for doing what he's doing. He's going to get it from Hiranyakashipu. He's fearless. He's not insulting Hiranyakashipu, but he's fearless. Now, how do we carry forward fearlessness? Shouldn't be foolishness. Should be thoughtful of, like, I was very much appreciating Vaisheshika Prabhu's class, the delivery system, he calls it, using that nomenclature. We want people to become attracted to the message so that they'll take the message. So we're not indiscriminate about how we deliver the message, because we want people to take the message. We don't water down the message, but the delivery system has to be, relatable, etc., etc., etc. Without changing or the message disappears. We encourage attachment instead of detachment. We encourage worldly existence instead of transcendental existence. We don't do that. The delivery system has to be appropriate for the time, place, circumstance. And in so doing, we're protected. That's the fearlessness part. And fear is, if one is honest, so not so many people are there, much rather be, macho and bluffing. No fear. Well, we don't know what's going to happen in the next moment. And as Kali Yuga becomes wilder and wilder, the sense of being safe from the distant wildness that may be happening over there somewhere in the Middle East is coming. The long hand of Kali Yuga. And that particular feature and so many other features are, safety is not what people thought it was. So many things to say on that topic. Our position is not safe. But when one is in the shelter of the Supreme Lord, that is the position of safety. That's the fearless, doubtless and fearless path in the language of the Bhagavatam. Akuto bhayam. Chanting of the holy name, awakening our desire to be situated again in Krishna's service, his recognizing our desire, awakening to be in his service, accepting us in his service, and giving us more and more service opportunities, which means more and more challenges, more and more opposition, more and more obstacles, more and more material energy standing in the way. Sometimes, things move, and that's really nice, and sometimes things don't move, and continue with enthusiasm and determination to serve in whatever the circumstances, in a fearless, doubtless and fearless way. So Prahlad is preparing his friends, and he's preparing us. Hare Krishna. Any discussion, Maharaj? Here comes the microphone.
It doesn't seem fair.
Oh.
One can work piously, devotedly, serving his family, serving the nation. Prabhupada talks at something, slight, when one's killed.
Yeah.
I think he's talking about Gandhi. And a fallen person like Ajamil calls out Narayan. He doesn't even mean Narayan. He means his son. And he goes at the head of the line, front of the line, and gets all benefits and deliverance. And the pious person who does his duty just gets ground again in the wheel. What kind of God is that? Just because he said your name, he's flattered that you tangentially said his name? What kind of ego is that?
Well, the last part was a little uncalled for, but leaving aside the ego issue, the question you just asked is something I just received a letter yesterday about, a little worded differently, not the ego part, but what about pious people that are, same portrayal, good, they may have never chanted, they have never heard, do you mean to say that they're at the back of the line compared to somebody that... Well, just like, one of the opulences of the Chicago temple room is these windows. And with that opulence comes some challenges, because depending on where the sun is, which time of the year, it can be right in your eyes. And it's, you can't see anything because the sun is so glaring. But so there's benefit from the sun and, and natural light. There, so there can be some sense of harshness or hardness or something like that too, from which one receives benefit. So the message, it's right in the purport here, but the message of the good man or good family members who try to serve one another and have, this and that and the other nice compassion and respect for others and all good things, mode of goodness things. There's a fly in the soup. There's a major misfortune, and that is, unless there's a connection with the personality of Godhead, it's like a dream. Now you see it, and the kaleidoscope turns a little bit, and it's completely gone, and everything's upside down. And even that is also a dream. And reality is being lost in the course of living the dream. And then the upside down, then struggling with the upside down. It's forgetfulness of the personality of Godhead is the root of material existence, whether it's this feature of the kaleidoscope or the next one, or the next one, or the next one, or the next one. And conversely, or in contrast, the position of the connection with the personality of Godhead through his holy name or other forms of his manifestation. That's reality, and with that reality comes its benediction. So it's not injustice, it's transcendental mercy for one to have that opportunity to chant the holy name. Again, in Jamila's case, Prabhupada specifically explains, because of his childhood and young adult life of religious training, he had become attached to Narayana. So Narayana protected him. How? When he had his youngest son, he inspired from within his heart to name him Narayana so that he would get that benefit. He could have called him so many other things, lots of different names, but Narayana, so that he would be protected by that calling of Narayana. And I'm just thinking specifically now about our brahmacharis regularly, if not daily, going on Harinam, and people that don't, the pious or impious people that hear the holy name. What a great benediction. Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, for people to hear the holy name. Whether pious, impious, hearing the holy name, it gives the awakening of transcendence, at least for that moment that they're hearing, and that's a permanent asset for them in the soul's journey through the material existence. So there's as an essential Bhagavatam message, the potency of the holy name, the potency of the Supreme Lord, specifically accessible readily and easily in this age of Kali, His holy name. And so it's not injustice, it's certainly not, egotism. Although this question this person wrote yesterday was, doesn't Krishna derive pleasure? He derives pleasure hearing someone calling his name, but it's not an egotism. He's full. It's the happiness of that living entity is now coming to their original consciousness, or moving towards that. That's his happiness. Now, Prabhupada explains that in terms of, isn't it that when someone calls your name, you feel something? Someone calls another person's name, you don't feel the same something as when someone calls your name. So it's where does that come from? It comes from Krishna, but Krishna is not the egotism kind. It's the loving kind. That which brings one closer to love for Krishna is very pleasing to Krishna. That kind. And that's what devotional service is. Wishing to please Krishna. That's what love is, wishing to please the beloved. That's Krishna's happiness, it's not egotism. Okay. We thought he was heading for the door for a moment. Anyone else? Yes?
Thank you, Maharaj. In regards to the point that even a little endeavor on this path can save one from the deepest kind of fear, seeing the Yamadutas, I sometimes wonder about practitioners in other traditions.
Wonder about which?
Practitioners in other traditions, in other religions.
Okay.
For example, like, this is a primarily Christian country. So people are going to church, they're offering prayers, they're trying to do service.
Fantastic.
At the same time, they're eating meat. So what type of destination, because it seems, in my book, it would seem like they're offering a prayer, they're trying to connect, so that might save them, but we also hear Mahaprabhu saying that anyone who eats, meat, they basically go to hell. Is that real devotional service that they're performing, or?
Sure, but mixed. What's their sankalpa? Heaven. Rupanuga. Bhadranaran Maharaj knows Rupanuga. He used to, our Rupanuga, Prabhupada's Rupanuga. He used to write, very penetrating, thoughtful questions in letters to Prabhupada. It went for some period of time, he was my GBC. And he wrote Prabhupada a letter asking, what's the destination of a perfect Christian? Which is kind of what your question is, right? So Prabhupada's reply is something to the effect that was, something like I've yet to find a perfect Christian, or something else. If a perfect Christian it would be very rare to find, something like that. But if they did become perfect, then their destination would be Brahmaloka, which isn't Swarga, that's not heaven, that's Brahmaloka, where they can continue to be further trained in devotional service and eventually go back to Godhead. But generally it's not, perfection. Love God with all thy heart. There's a whole mix going on. And so where the mixed, heaven, it's a nice place for mixed people. Some some of this and some of that. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Regarding Prahlad's instructions and how
You can hold the microphone closer, right? Good.
The students are gliding towards the hellish planets.
Very good.
And that's
It seems like
it seems like that's happening also here on this planet right now.
which is happening.
That the people are sliding towards the hellish planets.
People are gliding to hellish planets?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So it's like really heavy. It's really serious. So my question is that like how do we see this serious situation but not become like so hard-hearted? Like we have to be really serious, but we can't be like hardened by it. It's like you find being detached or like being really serious, fixed Krishna consciousness.
How to be detached without being hard-hearted is your question?
Yeah. Like
Not being attached
being
to
detached or being serious without being like hard-hearted, without not being able to show like affection like to the people and to each other.
Are you speaking, I'm probing about your question. Are you asking about how we can feel compassion instead of hard-heartedness towards people when we go on Harinam Sankirtan? Is that your question?
Yeah, because the situation's so serious that we want to fix ourselves up to be like really strong, but that can also make us not
Hard.
able to. Yeah.
Hard and not soft. Like that? Not just on Harinam, just our interactions with others? Okay. Bhakti, or attachment for Krishna. If one does not have attachment for Krishna, then there may be a tendency, usually, a tendency to fend, from attacks from Maya by, putting up a wall. And there are different kinds of walls, and one of them is, hardness, hard-heartedness, and, looking down your nose at somebody else that, and feeling that sense of well-being because I'm up here and they're down there, and it's pride or hard-heartedness. Different varieties of it. So, in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, the beginning of spiritual life, to say broader, the beginning of spiritual life, that's common. The cure is attachment to Krishna or devotion to Krishna. And when there's devotion to Krishna, then the sense of we're in this together, or compassion, genuine caring, not on the material platform, but on the spiritual platform, genuine caring for here's another soul. So then being forgiving and compassionate and kind instead of hard and judging and distancing yourself from that to protect yourself by that harshness and coldness. It melts by attachment to Krishna. And then one can act pleasingly and speak pleasingly for the pleasure of Krishna, because that's the attachment. And say it conversely. Without that attachment for Krishna, some element of this other is going to be there. Say it positively. So where our attention should go, when your attention should go, or our attention should go, is how much are we interested in pleasing Krishna by responding to the world around us, whether it's on Harinam or in the prasadam room or wherever we are. How much are we interested in pleasing Krishna? That's the measure. And based upon that, one can be very patient and very tolerant. Doesn't mean you don't, you go blind, you can't see anymore. Like intelligence got shut off, you're in the off position, and I just kind of go around smiling. Discrimination is there. Now, what to do about that? What is pleasing to Krishna in this circumstance? That's okay.
Hare Krishna. As you pointed out, Prabhupada said in the purport, one of his main points was how establishing a relationship with Krishna is very easy, just like because he's our father.
Yes.
So just as a son would establish a relationship with their father, it's very natural. But I'm not exactly convinced about the easiness of it. I understand the naturalness of it because it's a father and son, but
good point.
Since time immemorial, we've been placing like trillions of walls of samskaras.
Yes.
And anarthas between us and Krishna. So even though it's a natural relationship, it's very distant.
Yeah.
So.
Good point. Very, very astute. Which I'm reminded of is the statement, it's much easier to wake somebody who's sleeping than someone who's pretending to be asleep. So those millions of walls and barriers and obstacles between us and Krishna, in fact, they're illusory, and the illusory show of the material energy is very easily dispelled by light. Now, so which is the same dichotomy that you're bringing up, or on the one hand, but on the other hand, kind of a situation. It is easy. We just have to say yes. Well, okay. My point is saying yes isn't so easy because so much conditioning, such residual tendencies. On the presentation that I made on Monday evening, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's term was ancient prejudices, which is, the cause that brings us to the material world is repeated in lifetime after lifetime, Icha Dvesha, desire and hate. Dvandava mohena bharata, and so we're bewildered, and so we can't easily say yes, although it's easy to say yes. That's the dilemma you're pointing out. Therefore, it generally takes time, although it's very easy. And I'll end with this because it's now 8:41. You've probably heard me say this so many times, but I remember it directly because I was sitting right in front of Prabhupada. A reporter was asking, Swamiji, how long does it take to become Krishna conscious? Immediately Prabhupada's answer was, less than a moment. And then he said, in that less than a moment, this reporter was taken aback. It's very easy. And in that less than a moment, just two things. Detachment from the desire to be the enjoyer of fruitive activities and sense gratification. And the other is the tendency to understand higher reality through the powers of one's mental speculation. That's all. Then he said, but generally people are attached to those two things. And therefore, generally the process is gradual, then repeated. But less than a moment. So very easy, but we're attached. Our ancient prejudices and then modern prejudices. They're the ones that we develop the varieties of in this life based upon the ancient ones. Thinking specifically, we all, to one degree or another, we all have some affinity, some attraction for serving Krishna, different degrees in different ways, with some affinity for serving Krishna that has been awakened from the chanting of the holy name. And we also have some affinity for being the enjoyer of matter. This is, it's not so easy part. Something that will help, I find something that will help, is being really clear that unless we address that affinity for enjoying matter element that's within us, our particular variety of it, one more time, pa 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 ma. So it's necessary. The power is there within the process of bhakti to address it, to be honest and be clear and address it, not pretend it's not there, but whatever. Imagine we're something that we're not, and that the strength, the potency of light will dispel darkness. Shine light on that darkness, and focus on the light, not on the darkness, but shine light on that darkness, and let this be our final time. Let us not take birth again, but let us go to our eternal position of service to Krishna. Now that aspiration, Prabhupada says it very beautifully, succinctly. I can't find it. Narayana does not require as much endeavor as pleasing one's family, community, and nation. Some endeavor. Krishna will help us. Srila Prabhupada ki